Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to give you that shortcut to being genuinely well-informed. We take some of the most impactful global developments and, well, we unpack them.
Right, not just telling you what's happening, but really digging into why it matters to you.
Exactly. Our mission, like always, is to pull out those really vital nuggets of knowledge, those insights from all kinds of sources, news reports, industry analyses, even scientific findings.
And it's about cutting through all the noise out there and maybe most importantly, connecting the dots for you. Dots that might seem, totally unrelated at first glance.
Today, we're doing a particularly, I think, compelling deep dive. We're going to touch on escalating geopolitical pressures down in Latin America, the surprising resilience, maybe, of the global economy despite everything.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
A really eye-opening TikTok scandal that I think tells us a lot about the new rules of the attention economy.
Oh, definitely.
And finally, a potentially life-changing health innovation for millions of people.
So let's get into it. Let's unpack this.
Because when you start connecting these threads, here's where it gets really interesting. Okay, let's jump straight in. The complex, sometimes volatile, world of geopolitics and global stability. We're starting with the intense situation unfolding in Venezuela. It's a story that just keeps evolving, right? With pretty significant international implications.
I'm sure.
The United States has taken a really unprecedented step here. They've dramatically increased the bounty for information leading to Nicolás Maduro's capture.
We're talking a big jump, right?
Huge. From $15 million all the way up to $25 million. And this isn't just some random act. It comes literally right after Maduro's controversial swearing in for a third term back on January 10th, 2025.
An inauguration the U.S. and frankly many others see as illegitimate.
Exactly. There are widespread allegations of fraud from the opposition, which insists pretty firmly that Edmundo Gonzalez was the actual winner of the July 2024 elections.
And what's really striking about this bounty move is just how broad it is. It's not just about Maduro. This pressure campaign goes way beyond him. The U.S. is also offering that same $25 million bounty for Diosdado Cabello. He's widely seen as Venezuela's #2 official, a hugely influential figure, within the government, the military.
A major power player.
Absolutely. And then there's a $15 million reward for the defense minister, Vladimir López. And it's really important to remember, all three of these guys were already facing drug trafficking charges in the U.S.
Right, that adds another whole layer to this.
It does. It layers another dimension onto this already intense pressure. It's not purely political. It's also about alleged criminal activity, which is a key part of the U.S. justification.
And the pressure doesn't stop with just the bounties. The U.S. Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, as most people know it, they simultaneously announced a new round of targeted sanctions.
And these aren't just symbolic, are they?
Not at all. They're designed to hit Maduro's inner circle and hit them hard. We're talking senior officials who run key economic and security agencies, plus high-ranking military and police figures.
Who the U.S. specifically links to? What was the phrasing?
Repression and subversion of democracy and human rights abuses. They've actually named names, which really underscores, I think, the precision here.
Like who?
Well, among them, Hector Obregón, he's the president of PDVSA Petróleos de Venezuela, the state oil company, which is, the absolute backbone of Venezuela's economy.
Crucial.
And Ramón Celestino Velázquez, the Minister of Transportation. Plus, others cited include Danny Ramon Ferrer, Douglas Arnoldo Rico, Johnny Rafael Salazar, Manuel Enrique Castillo, and Jose Ramon Figuera. So, specific individuals.
And the implications for those people, the ones sanctioned, they're frankly severe.
Yeah.
Any assets, any interest they have in the U.S. blocked instantly.
Gone.
And furthermore, any financial institutions or even just individuals anywhere in the world who deal with them, who engage in transactions with them, they risk getting hit with U.S. sanctions themselves.
That's powerful.
It essentially cuts them off from a huge chunk of the global financial system. Makes it incredibly difficult to do international business, maybe even just manage personal finances.
But it's also crucial, right, to look at Maduro's reaction, his response to all this. He's certainly not taking it lying down.
No, definitely not backing down.
Not at all. He's been anything but quiet. If you look back at similar accusations from March 2020, Maduro has just consistently dismissed these U.S. drug trafficking charges, calls them false accusations. He even went as far as publicly painting the U.S. government as, and this is his quote, racist cowboys of the 19th century for offering bounties. It's highly charged language, obviously designed to stir up nationalist feelings.
Right. Rally the base.
Exactly. And Venezuelan officials have consistently pushed back, arguing these accusations minimize the high recognition Venezuela possesses in the fight against drug trafficking. They claim they're actually leaders in that fight, so they're pushing back hard on the U.S. narrative.
And this isn't just a U.S.-only thing, which I think makes it even more impactful, potentially. There's a kind of broader international alignment, or at least a coordinated effort from other Western powers.
Like the EU?
Exactly. The European Union, for instance, has also broadened its sanctions list. They added 15 key figures from Venezuela's Supreme Court, the National Electoral Council, the Armed Forces, intelligence agencies.
We have key institutions.
Right. And their reasoning is explicit. These are people whose actions undermine democracy and the rule of law, specifically related to those disputed July 2024 elections and the ongoing repression of the opposition.
And Canada too, right?
Canada too. They also stepped up, announced their own new sanctions against 14 current and former Venezuelan officials, again, all implicated in activities supporting human rights violations.
So if you're watching this whole thing unfold, what does it really mean? We're seeing this concerted effort, multiple Western powers trying to isolate the Maduro regime, using financial pressure, legal pressure, diplomatic pressure.
A multi-pronged approach.
Yeah, but the regime remains incredibly defiant, seems almost undeterred by all this external pressure. So the really crucial question here is, what are the actual pathways forward for Venezuela amidst all this international heat?
And maybe more importantly,
Yeah.
how do these high-stakes geopolitical games ultimately impact the ordinary people, the citizens on the ground in Venezuela?
Because historically, they're the ones who bear the brunt, right? Increased economic hardship, limited access to food, medicine, sometimes forced migration.
Exactly. It leaves many wondering if this kind of strategy, these broad sanctions, actually achieves the stated goal of promoting democracy, or if it inadvertently just tightens the regime's grip by creating this us versus them narrative, this common enemy.
That's the tragic paradox, isn't it? While a stated goal might be democracy or accountability, maybe the deeper insight here is that broad sanctions, especially against a leader who's already defiant, can sometimes backfire. It can strengthen internal support.
Right. It becomes about external interference. Allows the government to blame foreigners for domestic problems.
And it's the citizens who get squeezed, caught in this geopolitical struggle with no clear end in sight.
Yeah, the pathways forward are probably through much more nuanced internal shifts or maybe significant external mediation, which right now seems pretty far off.
Okay, from that global geopolitical chessboard, let's widen the lens a bit. Let's look at the global economic picture. What's the latest from the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, on how the world economy is actually doing amidst all this? It's pretty fascinating, actually.
What are they saying?
They've actually upgraded their global growth forecasts. For 2025, they're now predicting 3% growth, and for 2026, 3.1%.
Okay, that's up from their last report.
Yeah, it's a notable improvement, up from 2.8% and 3% respectively in their April report. It really indicates maybe a more resilient global financial landscape than a lot of people expected, especially with all the trade tensions we've been seeing.
Interesting. And why the upgrade? What are the reasons they're giving?
Well, the IMF specifically pointed to a considerably weakened U.S. dollar as a key factor.
Ah, okay. How does that help?
Well, for emerging markets and developing economies, it's a really big deal. It gives them crucial monetary policy space. Basically, a weaker dollar makes their dollar-denominated debts cheaper to pay back, and it makes their exports more competitive on the global market.
Right, that makes sense.
Anything else?
They also highlighted specific actions taken by certain governments to boost growth, suggesting, some proactive policies have actually paid off.
Okay.
And there was a strong surge in exports heading to the U.S. But this wasn't just like normal growth. Businesses were actively front-loading shipments, meaning they were speeding up their deliveries, getting goods into the U.S. faster than usual because they were worried about impending tariffs, trying to beat the deadline before new duties might hit.
Ah, okay. Getting ahead of potential tariffs.
Exactly. And critically, the White House has partly reversed course on a lot of the high tariffs that were threatened earlier in the year.
Oh, really?
Yeah. This included 2 delays to what were called Trump's reciprocal tariffs. Tariffs put in place in response to duties from other countries, and also a May agreement with China to lower rates until August 12th.
So the actual tariff rate is lower now.
Significantly lower, according to the IMS calculations for these projections. The effective U.S. tariff rate is now 17.3%, which is way down from 24.4% back in April. That's a pretty dramatic shift and obviously very impactful for global trade flows.
Okay, so that sounds pretty positive, but there's usually a but, isn't there?
There usually is. Despite these positive developments, the IMF chief economist, Pierre-Olivier Gourinchas, he offers a really crucial word of caution.
What's he saying?
He states quite clearly that tariffs remain historically high and global policy remains highly uncertain. He points out that the market's resilience, while welcome, is also tenuous, kind of fragile.
Okay. So not out of the woods yet.
Not at all. He is concerned that without comprehensive agreements, this ongoing trade uncertainty could increasingly drag down investment and economic activity. And there's another risk, too.
Which is?
If demand for all those stockpiled goods, the stuff that was front-loaded, doesn't actually materialize, then firms could be left really vulnerable, just sitting on huge amounts of excess inventory. Suddenly, that's a liability, not an asset. It's a very delicate balancing act.
Right, a sort of economic tightrope walk.
Exactly. So, looking ahead on the tariff front, the U.S. has managed to get a few bilateral trade deals done with Indonesia, Japan, the EU, for example. But there's a deadline looming. August 1st, for other countries hit by those reciprocal tariffs, there's potential for new, maybe even higher duties on Canada and Mexico then, and that U.S.-China truce we just mentioned. That also ends August 12th. Although, interestingly, reports suggest negotiations there are going pretty well, hinting maybe at a possible extension, which would be a big relief for a lot of global supply chains.
So what's really fascinating here, what does this tell us about the power dynamics of international trade today? Are we kind of entering a new era where these tariff threats are really more like bargaining chips, tactical moves in a negotiation, rather than, fixed long-term policies?
It certainly feels more fluid, more unpredictable.
Yeah, this constant negotiation, the potential for reversal, it definitely suggests a much more high-stakes game. And for you listening, whether you're a consumer or an investor, how might these shifts ultimately affect your investment portfolio? Or even just the prices of the things you buy every day?
It really highlights how interconnected everything is, high-level global policy and your personal finances, often in ways you might not immediately think about.
And this volatility, it isn't just some abstract economic concept, right?
Yeah.
It has very real, very tangible impacts on major corporations.
Absolutely. Let's look at a giant like Mercedes-Benz, a perfect example, really, of a company caught right in the crossfire of these trade wars.
What's happened with them?
They've significantly lowered their 2025 profit margin forecast for their car division, down to just 4-6%.
Wow. Compared to what?
It's a stark contrast to their earlier projection of 6-8%, which they gave back in February. And why the big change? This adjustment accounts for a nearly $420 million hit directly from tariffs.
$420 million just from tariffs.
Yep. That translates to about 150 basis points shaved off their operating profit margin. And for context, 150 basis points is 1.5 percentage points. For a company the size of Mercedes, that's hundreds of millions in lost profit. They actually withdrew their guidance entirely by April.
Which really shows the level of uncertainty, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And the direct financial damage these trade tensions were causing them.
And even though that recent U.S.-EU trade agreement, the one where the U.S. agreed to a 15% import tariff, down from a threatened 30%, and the EU committed to reducing non-tariff barriers even though that was, quote, more favorable than feared.
It still hurt them.
It still deeply hurts Mercedes' bottom line. Their CEO, Oleg Hallenius, while he welcomed the deal, saying it will help us rather than damage us, he still had to acknowledge the persisting impact. It wasn't like a win that erased the damage. It was more like mitigating a potentially worse outcome.
A less bad scenario.
Exactly. It's a telling sign that even a good deal in this environment can still carry a really hefty price tag.
And you can see the financial downturn already in their second quarter results. Their adjusted EBIT, that's earnings before interest and taxes, fell by more than 50%, over half, down to $1.99 billion.
Wow.
Their total EBIT plunged even further to $1.27 billion. And that figure includes not just the tariff burden, but also some internal efficiency issues they were having and a huge $750 million loss from selling off a plant in Argentina.
Ouch. A perfect storm almost.
Pretty much. And revenue took a significant hit too, dropping 9% to $33.15 billion, largely driven by declining vehicle sales and those ongoing trade costs.
And beyond just the tariffs, A big factor hurting Mercedes-Benz right now is China, isn't it?
Yeah, China. Once this massive growth engine for luxury automakers like them, now it's a significant problem. Vehicle sales there just plummeted, 10% down in the first quarter, and then a staggering 19% down in the second quarter.
Why such a steep drop?
It's attributed to a mix of things. Rising local competition, especially from Chinese EV
Right,
brands.
they're getting really strong.
Very strong. Also, Mercedes's historically premium pricing, which is facing more resistance now in a more price-sensitive market there, and maybe a slower adaptation to electric vehicles specifically designed for the Chinese market. It just shows how quickly market dynamics can shift, even for huge, established global brands, forces them to rethink their core strategies.
And it's striking you mentioned they export a lot from their U.S. plant.
Yeah, about two-thirds of the vehicles they make at their plant in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, get exported. Kilenius noted the company isn't reacting, hastily to all this, but they are thinking hard about their footprint over the next 5 to 10 years.
That sounds significant.
It is. It's not just a minor tweak. It indicates a really profound, long-term, strategic rethinking of where they actually produce vehicles globally, considering this changing trade landscape and the shifts in regional markets. What really stands out to you here? How does this just vividly illustrate the direct, tangible cost of these global trade tensions on individual companies, on their intricate supply chains?
It really drives it home, doesn't it?
Yeah. And does this incentivize a big push towards more localized production, build closer to where you sell to avoid tariffs? Or does it just force companies to get even smarter, more agile, more adaptive with their global strategies to navigate this kind of volatility? It's a very real-world example of how these high-level political decisions hit a company's balance sheet hard.
It really highlights that even for a global giant like Mercedes, these trade policies aren't just, minor headwinds. They're substantial forces that require a fundamental rethinking of their entire production and market strategy. It's not just about shaving off a bit of profit. It's about potentially restructuring their whole global manufacturing footprint.
That shift towards localization, it almost seems inevitable in a world where trade stability just isn't a given anymore.
Okay, shifting to another really critical geopolitical development.
Yeah.
We're seeing a significant diplomatic pivot regarding the Israel-Palestine conflict.
Yeah, this is big news. In a major policy reversal, the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced on Tuesday, July 29th, 2025, that the UK would officially recognize a Palestinian state in September.
But it's conditional, right? It's not automatic.
Correct. It's not unconditional. It's contingent on Israel taking substantive, verifiable steps. Things like ending the war and the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, making it clear they won't annex the West Bank, and committing to a viable peace process that actually results in a two-state solution. So, conditions attached.
Still, that decision creates a pretty significant diplomatic challenge for Israel. And the timing is crucial here.
How so?
It comes just days after France made a similar announcement. They intend to recognize a Palestinian state at the UN General Assembly, also in September.
Oh, okay. So there's momentum building.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And adding to that ripple effect, Malta has also declared its intention to recognize Palestine in September. So if the UK follows through, it would be the second Western power on the UN Security Council, after France, and maybe more importantly, the closest of Israel's traditional allies to make such a move.
That could trigger a wave of similar recognitions from other countries.
It absolutely could.
Starmer framed his decision very explicitly based on humanitarian concerns. That's a powerful framing given what's happening. He cited the appalling situation and the catastrophic failure of aid in Gaza, talked about starving babies and children too weak to stand, images, he said, that will stay with us for a lifetime. He emphasized quite strongly the suffering must end.
And he spoke to both sides beforehand.
Reportedly, yes. He spoke directly with both Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas before the public announcement, trying to manage the diplomatic fallout, presumably. Abbas, predictably, praised the UK's stance and called for immediate official recognition.
But it's also crucial how the UK is trying to frame this, right? To distinguish the recognition of a state from recognizing Hamas.
Yes, very important distinction they're trying to make. Their statement stressed that recognizing a Palestinian state does not amount to recognizing the Hamas terror group as a legitimate state actor. Starmer himself reiterated condemnation of Hamas's monstrous terrorism on October 7th. He asserted Hamas must release all hostages, commit to an immediate ceasefire, have no role in Gaza's government, and disarm.
So a very careful balancing act. separating the aspiration for Palestinian statehood as part of a long-term peace plan from the actions of a group they designate as terrorists.
Right. And they were quite transparent, acknowledging that recognition by itself will not change the situation on the ground immediately. So, alongside the diplomatic move, the UK pledged additional immediate steps to alleviate the humanitarian situation. Things like airdropping supplies into Gaza with Jordan and evacuating injured children to the UK for medical treatment.
And what about the U.S. reaction, particularly Trump's stance?
Yeah, that's interesting too. President Trump's stance seems to have evolved a bit. Initially, a report said he told Starmer he did not mind if Britain recognized a Palestinian state. But later, he kind of distanced himself, claimed they never did discuss it. He then criticized pressuring Israel, saying, if you do that, you really are rewarding Hamas, and I don't think they should be rewarded. But then, in a sort of characteristic Trumpian way, he did say it was okay for Macron and Starmer to hold different opinions from the U.S., so a bit contradictory, maybe?
Israel's reaction, though, was pretty strong and clear, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. Unequivocal. Their foreign ministry rejected the UK's decision, arguing it constitutes a reward for Hamas and harms efforts to achieve a ceasefire and framework for the release of the hostages.
And Netanyahu himself weighed in.
He did, on X. Said, Starmer rewards Hamas's monstrous terrorism and punishes its victims, and added, a jihadist state on Israel's border today will threaten Britain tomorrow. Really strong language, highlighting Israel's deep security concerns.
But there is division within Israel, too.
Yes. The Israeli opposition quickly blamed Netanyahu's coalition, saying they led Israel into a diplomatic disaster. Suggests some internal political disagreement on how this is being handled.
Meanwhile, on the international stage, the UK's move gained some support.
Significant support. The British Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, got applause at a UN conference on the two-state solution. He stated the UK's move was specifically intended to pressure Jerusalem to end the fighting in Gaza. He sharply criticized Netanyahu's government for rejecting a two-state solution, calling it wrong morally and it's wrong strategically, and ultimately harmful to Israelis by closing off the only viable path to long-term peace.
So this really raises a massive question for everyone watching. What concrete impact will these international diplomatic shifts from France, Malta, potentially the UK actually have on the ground in the conflict zones?
Will this mounting international pressure truly reshape the future of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? Is this the kind of pressure needed to finally push both sides towards meaningful dialogue, towards a lasting resolution?
Or could it inadvertently be seen as a dangerous precedent, something that further destabilizes an already incredibly fragile region? It's a really high-stakes gamble with profound human consequences hanging in the balance.
Yeah, it's such a complex interplay of international law, humanitarian concerns, national security interests. Every diplomatic move is scrutinized for its potential real-world impact. Does it actually bring peace closer or push it further away?
It's a real test of whether external pressure can genuinely change the internal dynamics of such a deeply entrenched conflict.
Okay, let's shift gears now. Let's talk about the fragility of institutions and the critical importance of accountability, starting with a truly controversial confirmation in the U.S. Senate. Emil Bov.
Right, the former personal attorney for President Donald Trump.
Exactly. He was narrowly confirmed to a lifetime federal judgeship on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit. And when I say narrow, I mean razor thin. 50-49 vote on July 29th, 2025.
And it went ahead despite significant controversy.
Huge controversy. Every single Democrat voted against him. And they were joined by two prominent Republican senators, Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins, which you don't often see on these kinds of judicial votes anymore.
Now, Bov's legal background, it's interesting. He's a Georgetown law grad, spent a decade as a federal prosecutor in the Southern District of New York.
Handling big cases, right. Terrorism, drug trafficking.
Exactly. A career path that usually signals, strong legal mind, commitment to justice, that sort of thing. But then his career took a very distinct turn.
Towards Trump.
Right. He joined President Trump's personal defense team, worked on 3 major criminal cases, the classified documents case, the 2020 election interference case, and the New York hush money case.
Where Trump was convicted on all 34 charges.
Correct. And Bov also held a really high-level post, Principal Associate Deputy Attorney General in the Justice Department during the second Trump administration. Even briefly served as acting Deputy AG.
So what's fascinating here is that trajectory from, a seemingly nonpartisan federal prosecutor to being the president's intensely partisan personal defense lawyer, then a top official back inside the DOJ, and now culminating in this super controversial lifetime judicial appointment, it really highlights the shifting landscapes, maybe, of public service and political alignment in the U.S. right now.
Definitely. And the core of the controversy, what really ignited the whole debate, comes down to these explosive whistleblower allegations.
From Erez Raveni.
Right. A career DOJ attorney in nearly 15 years who was fired in April 2025. He alleged that Bov, while serving as that senior DOJ official, actually suggested to subordinates that the department should consider telling federal courts "F you" and just ignore judicial orders.
Wow, that's a staggering allegation against a top DOJ official, let alone a future judge.
It is. And this alleged remark was supposedly made during internal discussions about carrying out these really aggressive deportations of Venezuelan nationals, sending them to El Salvador's infamous CE-cut megaprison.
By using that old law.
Yeah, using the obscure, rarely invoked 18th Century Alien Enemies Act, the AEA, which allows deportation of non-citizens during declared war or invasion, a highly unusual legal justification in this context.
And Raveni provided proof. He didn't just make the claim.
No, he provided Congress with what seems like pretty compelling corroborating evidence. Text messages, email exchanges between himself and other DOJ colleagues.
What did they show?
These communications repeatedly referenced Bov's alleged "F you" remark, and they conveyed significant alarm among other officials about the idea of potentially defying clear court orders and maybe facing serious sanctions for misleading federal judges.
So it wasn't just Raveni concerned.
Apparently not, and this is where it really hit the fan, legally speaking. U.S. District Judge James Boasberg, on March 15, 2025, issued a temporary restraining order, a TRO, very explicit command to the Trump administration. Immediately return all planes heading to El Salvador with these AEA deportees back to the U.S., and crucially, that the individuals should not be deplaned.
But the deportations happened anyway.
Despite that clear, direct order, shockingly, yes, the deportations went ahead.
And Judge Boasberg, he didn't just let that go, did he?
Absolutely not. In April, Judge Boasberg found probable cause to hold Trump administration officials in criminal contempt for demonstrating what he called a willful disregard for his orders. He specifically noted the government didn't even dispute that it transferred Venezuelans into Salvadoran custody after his TRO was issued. That's a crucial point.
And there's evidence linking Bov directly to defying that order.
There's an email released by Raveni that seems to directly implicate Bov in the administration's decision to ignore the court order. Yakov Roth, who was acting head of the DOJ's civil division at the time, stated in a March 16th email that the principal associate deputy attorney general, that was Bov, had advised the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, that deplaning the flights before the court's order was actually permissible.
But the judge rejected that interpretation.
Completely rejected it, and deemed that specific advice as the basis for starting criminal contempt proceedings. And Raveni's emails from that time clearly show other DOJ attorneys understood Boasberg's order was the exact opposite of Bov's alleged advice. It shows a stark internal disagreement over interpretation and, well, compliance.
And beyond just contempt of court, Bov is also implicated in violating the migrants' rights.
Yes, their fundamental due process rights. The Supreme Court ruled on April 7, 2025, that people detained under the AEA are entitled to notice and an opportunity to challenge their removal through a habeas petition before they're removed. Basic legal rights.
Rights these Venezuelans didn't get.
Rights that the 137 deported Venezuelans were never afforded. And Bov was cited as a key decision maker in that whole process.
And then more whistleblowers came forward.
Yeah, the controversy just deepened. 2 more whistleblowers emerged, which lent further credence to Raveni's initial claims and made it much harder for Bov's defenders to just dismiss them.
Who were they?
A second, unnamed former attorney from the DOJ's Office of Immigration Litigation, someone who actually left the department after those AEA flights, submitted internal documents to the DOJ's Inspector General that directly corroborated Raveni's claims. This whistleblower explicitly said it would be incredibly dangerous for Bov to get a lifetime appointment given his alleged conduct.
And a third one, too.
A third one as well. Also provided senators with documentation that flatly contradicted claims Bov himself made during his Senate Judiciary Committee confirmation hearing related to a different DOJ matter. So serious, specific accusations backed up by internal communications from multiple sources.
But Bov denied everything.
Publicly, yes. During his confirmation hearing, he denied suggesting he would consider ignoring court orders. And Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley, Republican from Iowa, staunchly defended him. Called the accusations unfair, said his staff found no evidence. Bov urged defiance. Grassley argued, essentially, that Government lawyers aggressively litigating and interpreting court orders isn't misconduct, it's what lawyers do. So if we connect this to the bigger picture, this whole saga raises really fundamental, deeply concerning questions about the separation of powers in government, about the basic integrity of our federal institutions, and the role of accountability in high-level appointments, especially for a lifetime position that absolutely demands impartiality.
Yeah, what does it mean for our legal system, for a public trust in it? When such serious allegations surface against a judicial nominee backed by evidence, and they still get confirmed.
It's a profound question, and the accusations broadened beyond just those AEA flights, right? They painted a larger picture of Bov's role inside Trump's DOJ.
Yeah, former prosecutors described him as Trump's hatchet man within the department. Alleged he actively helped purge officials who were deemed insufficiently loyal to Trump, including people who worked on the January 6 cases.
And he was also accused of being central to scuttling the DOJ's bribery prosecution of New York City Mayor Eric Adams.
Right. Several prosecutors reportedly resigned in protest over that, believing the decision was a political quid pro quo driven by politics, not the merits of the case. Bov, of course, denied this, said it was all within legitimate prosecutorial discretion.
But the opposition to his nomination from the legal community was huge, wasn't it? And pretty unified.
Remarkably unified, across different backgrounds. Over 900 former DOJ prosecutors, dozens of former federal and state judges, all formally opposed Bov's nomination, cited concerns about him trampling over institutional norms and lacking the impartiality crucial for a judge.
And the Democrats on the Judiciary Committee even walked out.
Yeah, staged an unusual walkout during a hearing on Bov. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer called him an extreme of the extreme and a Trumpian henchman.
So this really brings us back to that important question. How does the confirmation of such a controversial figure, despite this unified opposition from the legal community, despite serious whistleblower claims, how does that affect public trust in the judiciary, in the Department of Justice itself?
And what are the long-term implications for the independence of the justice system, especially in such a highly polarized political climate? What kind of precedent does this set for future judicial appointments?
It's a real test of the checks and balances that are supposed to uphold our legal system's integrity. And it certainly puts a stark spotlight on the political dimensions of these lifetime judicial appointments in our current environment.
Okay, let's pivot now. From the very serious world of politics and justice to the, well, equally complex and sometimes pretty unsettling world of the attention economy.
Ah, yes, the battle for eyeballs.
Exactly. And we're kicking this off with a truly wild story, frankly almost unbelievable. The TikTok fake heiress scandal.
Oh, I heard about this one.
Yeah. So TikTok's For You page,
Yeah.
you know, the algorithm that decides what millions of people see, it recently amplified this sensational story about a woman calling herself Marina Byron, using the handle at That Marina Girl,
And she claimed to be related to.
claimed to be the daughter of astronomer CEO Andy Byron. This was right after Andy Byron had been caught in that viral Coldplay kiss cam incident, making him sort of temporarily internet famous or infamous.
Okay.
But the twist, the really shocking part, Andy Byron actually has 2 sons, and Marina Byron was really Julie Touzette, a French singer.
No way.
Yeah. Her luxury lifestyle Instagram content had been just brazenly stolen and completely repurposed to create this elaborate fake persona.
Wow. So a total fabrication.
And it went viral.
Hugely viral. This wasn't just some random fluke or like an amateur prank. The account exploded, gained over 127,000 followers, piled up tens of millions of views.
What was the hook?
It was largely thanks to a very specific, very emotionally manipulative strategy. The account posted all these heartfelt videos about her supposed parents' divorce, her emotional recovery journey, mixed in with casual posts from yachts and private jets, created this image that was both aspirational, rich and vulnerable.
The sympathy play combined with luxury. Precisely. This narrative, mixing emotional pain with extreme privilege, created a classic sympathy storyline, and it fostered what experts call parasocial attachment.
That feeling like you really know a creator.
Exactly. That one-sided bond where viewers feel like they deeply know and empathize with the person, even though the relationship is totally imagined. And that emotional investment made them much more likely to follow calls to action, like, oh, help her monetize her pain, which led to more interaction, more shares, boosting it in the algorithm.
It sounds disturbingly familiar. Didn't something similar happen before?
Eerily similar. It mirrors a situation back in 2018 where a woman faked being a MAGA supporter, kicked out by her parents to get $150,000 for college through GoFundMe. It highlights this disturbing pattern of exploiting emotional narratives for financial gain online.
And the whole point of this elaborate fake heiress thing was...
Stealth monetization. Pure and simple. There was a masked link hidden in the account's bio. Tape.ia download Dicopia.
Okay, where did that go?
It silently redirected anyone who clicked it to an iOS app called Manifest Affirmations Copia, basically a meditation app offering daily affirmations, wellness journaling for a $49.99 a year subscription.
Ah, there it is, the grift.
But there it is. And the tie-in was brilliant, psychologically speaking. The hook was, Marina is healing from her trauma using affirmations, and hey, so can you. It created this seemingly smooth funnel right from emotional investment in her story directly to a financial transaction.
And even a tiny conversion rate on millions of views.
Could yield hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue. It's a really stark reminder that viral growth, especially on platforms like TikTok, is very, very rarely accidental.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's almost always meticulously planned, meticulously intentional. You see experienced marketers like record labels that own these massive meme pages. Think of it, Daquan, with like 16 million followers. They use them to quietly push songs or products into public consciousness, often without the audience ever realizing it's just sophisticated paid marketing.
Right.
This fake heiress stunt was a near-perfect example of growth hacking. It used what's called visual trust bias, leveraging that high-quality aspirational lifestyle footage to create an instant sense of authenticity. Combined it with sympathy bait, that relatable emotional arc, and then finished with stealth monetization, that cleverly hidden product tie-in. It just demonstrates the calculated nature of virality today.
And it also really starkly highlights maybe the fragility of modern platforms like TikTok, whose underlying systems, frankly, just weren't built to verify identities before pushing content out to millions and millions of users globally.
And the app stores don't really have an incentive to stop it, do they?
Not really. They are incentivized to intervene when installs are surging because, quite simply, that means more revenue for them through their cut of the subscriptions. This whole stunt, though, it undeniably violates identity theft laws in multiple places, and it ticks every single box on TikTok's own synthetic media misinformation policy.
So there are legal consequences.
There should be. It leaves the actual victims, Andy Byron, Julie Touzette, and maybe most importantly, all those misled subscribers who paid for the app with pretty clear grounds for civil action. And it's also being noted as a perfect example of how AI-generated UGC, user-generated content, can be used to tell such stories on the internet, making these kinds of sophisticated deceptions even easier to create and scale up.
Scary stuff.
It is. So what does this all mean for you, the average person just scrolling through your feed? How much can we really trust what we see, read, and hear online anymore? And how are platforms truly evolving, or maybe not evolving fast enough to combat these sophisticated, digitally native deceptions? What does this mean for the future of marketing? And where are the ethical lines for online influence when virality can be engineered through such elaborate, damaging hoaxes?
It really forces us to confront this uncomfortable idea that what we think is organic or authentic online is increasingly just manufactured. It raises a critical need for much, much higher media literacy in the digital age for every single one of us. Because if you can't trust who's speaking or why they're speaking, the whole foundation of online communication starts to crumble.
Yeah, absolutely. Which brings us neatly to a broader, almost philosophical concept, attention itself as the new scarce resource.
The attention economy.
Exactly. Kyla Scanlon, who's a really sharp economic theorist, she argues that attention is increasingly becoming a new foundational economic input, right up there with the traditional ones like land, labor, capital, especially online.
So attention is like the new oil.
Kind of, yeah. She posits that Silicon Valley startups are now prioritizing attention capture capability above almost everything else. She points to companies like Cluely, which openly embraces what they actually call brain rot marketing, a phrase that's both, alarming and incredibly illustrative.
Brain rot marketing.
Seriously. Or they follow the Jake Paul playbook of stunts and pure virality. These are seen as prime examples of this dramatic shift in economic focus. It's all about grabbing and holding attention.
And we're seeing the impact of this shift everywhere, right?
Yeah.
A really striking example is the recent cancellation of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert by CBS.
Yeah, that was big news. Despite leading in late-night TV since 2016, the show had lost a third of its audience and was reportedly losing $40 million a year.
And the reason given was
Basically, TikTok ate late night. It sounds blunt, but it signifies this massive, probably irreversible change in how people consume content.
especially younger generations.
Totally. Younger generations, particularly Gen Z, they now spend a staggering 108 minutes per day on TikTok. That's nearly 2 full hours.
Wow, every day.
Every single day, content consumption has shifted dramatically to these bite-sized videos, which inevitably shortens attention spans. It creates this direct negative correlation. The more content that's available, the shorter our individual and collective attention spans seem to become. It's a really profound cultural and cognitive shift happening right under our noses.
So if attention is the new scarce resource,
Yeah.
we're also about to see an even bigger explosion of content, right?
Yeah.
Driven by AI.
Oh, absolutely. We are right on the cusp of a massive surge in content, driven by increasingly sophisticated artificial intelligence. Take Google's VO3 model, for instance. It can produce videos like a realistic IKEA ad that would normally cost maybe $100,000 to create without AI, now doable at a fraction of the time and cost.
Incredible.
Or look at Descartes' Mirage model. It can manipulate live video in real time. Users can transform any camera feed into a new digital world instantly. Imagine turning your boring Zoom meeting into a frozen wonderland or maybe a zombie setting.
Okay, that sounds kind of fun, but also potentially chaotic.
Right. It has profound implications for platforms like Twitch, where creators can constantly reinvent their visual persona on the fly.
So this coming deluge of AI-generated content, it's going to further increase the sheer amount of information bombarding us, which will inevitably lead to even shorter attention spans.
Making attention even scarcer.
Exactly, driving up the price of attention. But this scarcity is also a really powerful driver for innovation. It's leading to new mediums and new business models designed specifically to capture and monetize that scarce attention.
Okay, like what kind of new mediums?
Well, first, on new mediums, you can think of content using Sarah Tavel's framework, content as rocks. That's long-form, high-attention stuff like a novel or, a deep dive like this. Then there's sand, short-form, gap-filling content like endlessly scrolling social media feeds.
Right.
And then there's water content that kind of permeates other activities. And audio, for example, really stands out as water. It allows us to find new time in our days and new pockets of attention to mine value from. It fills spaces where visual content can't really go, like when you're commuting, working out, doing chores.
Makes sense. And voice AI is getting much better, right?
The breakthroughs in voice AI are truly remarkable, almost sci-fi level now. Large language models, LLMs like GPT-4o, have made voice AI incredibly good. We're finally overcoming those past frustrations with the brittle, command-based assistants that always misunderstood you.
Yeah, those were painful.
Totally. Voice AI can now hold genuinely natural, organic conversations. They're fluid, contextual, even emotive in their responses. The latency, the delay has drastically improved, down to just 200, 500 milliseconds, which is almost indistinguishable from real-time human conversation.
Wow.
Costs have plummeted. And these models can express tone, sarcasm, excitement. They sound truly human-like. Plus, they're getting much better at remembering user details, allowing for ongoing, meaningful relationships.
So it's not just transactional anymore.
Exactly. This unlocks a whole new surface area for attention. Think about interacting with an AI while you're driving or cooking or folding laundry, seamlessly integrating into moments that were previously kind of unmonetizable.
Which leads us to new business models, right? To monetize that attention more deeply, beyond just ads.
Precisely. While the early internet companies relied heavily on ads, these new AI tools are popularizing more effective ways to mine attention. Things like subscriptions, freemium models, microtransactions.
And people are actually willing to pay for this stuff.
They're showing a greater willingness to pay because, quite simply, AI unlocks delightful new experiences. And payment friction is way down, thanks to things like Apple Pay. It's about delivering a level of personalization and engagement that feels like it justifies a direct payment.
Is there a good example of this?
A great, maybe slightly quirky example is the Tolan app. It offers alien best friends for companionship.
Alien best friends, seriously.
Seriously. This app recently raised a $20 million Series A funding round, and it's reportedly doing over $10 million in annual revenue, which is a crucial metric now for consumer companies. Remember, they used to focus almost exclusively on monthly active users. Now it's about revenue.
Right, the bottom line.
Exactly. And its onboarding flow is entirely voice AI-led. It engages users in a natural conversation to create their customized Tolan, their alien friend, and
Okay.
it employs a hard paywall right after that initial interaction.
Interesting. A return to the paywall.
Yeah, it signals a clear return of that direct monetization strategy, proving that if the experience is delightful enough, personalized enough, people will pay.
So this raises a really important question for all of us. As attention becomes maybe the last truly scarce resource, how will individuals and businesses fight to extract more value from it? Will it be by finding broader ways to capture it, integrating into more and more parts of our daily lives? Or by finding deeper, more personalized ways to monetize it, asking us to pay for more curated, more delightful experiences?
And what does this mean for the future of digital content? For AI? For even just our daily routines, as companies constantly vie for our most precious commodity, our attention.
It fundamentally suggests the future isn't just about what content we consume, but maybe more about how we pay for it. Not just with our wallets, but more fundamentally with our limited, precious attention.
It's fascinating and sometimes unsettling. Look at the commodification of our own cognitive engagement. A deep dive in itself, really.
Okay, finally today, let's turn our attention to something potentially really exciting. A health innovation that could genuinely be a game changer for millions of people all over the world.
What are we talking about?
We're discussing a potential breakthrough in treating obstructive sleep apnea, or OSA.
Sleep apnea. That's really common, isn't it?
Incredibly common. For anyone who might not know, obstructive sleep apnea is a prevalent and actually quite serious sleep disorder. It's characterized by repeated blockage of the airway during sleep.
Which leads to paused breathing.
Exactly. Leads to paused breathing and critically oxygen deprivation. Imagine constantly waking up, maybe hundreds of times a night, even if you don't consciously remember it, because your brain is basically screaming at your body that it can't breathe.
Yeah, that sounds rough. And it's more common than people
It's
realize.
far more common. Estimates suggest maybe 1 billion adults aged 30 to 69 globally could have it, with a huge number going undiagnosed.
And what causes it?
Usually it's anatomical, commonly caused by the collapse of tissues and muscles at the back of the throat during sleep. This results in that really loud snoring people associate with it, sometimes choking noises, and frequent awakenings as the body struggles to start breathing again.
But the impact goes way beyond just, bad sleep or annoying your partner.
Oh, absolutely. Untreated OSA can contribute to a whole range of significant serious health problems. We're talking high blood pressure, heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, even depression. It impacts overall quality of life and even longevity. The long-term health consequences make finding effective, accessible treatment incredibly important.
So what are the current treatments? What do people do now?
Well, when we look at the current treatment landscape, there are options, but they often come with pretty significant challenges, which is why innovation here is so critical. The most well-known treatment is CPAP.
Right, the mask thing.
Exactly. Continuous positive airway pressure therapy involves wearing a mask connected to a machine that delivers air pressure to physically keep the airway open while you sleep.
And does it work?
It's effective when used correctly. But CPAP can be uncomfortable, the machine can be noisy. Some people find it really difficult to tolerate long term, which leads to poor compliance. People just don't use it consistently.
Yeah, I've heard that can be a big issue. What else is there?
Other options include oral appliance therapy, like a custom mouth guard surgery in some cases, upper airway stimulation devices which are implanted, weight management, positional therapy, like not sleeping on your back, and general lifestyle changes.
Is there any medication?
Currently, there's only one FDA-approved prescription medication called Zepbound, that's tirzepatide, one of those new weight loss drugs, but it's specifically approved for adults with moderate to severe OSA and obesity. So it's not a solution for everyone with sleep apnea.
So given how common and serious OSA is, what really stands out to you about this? What are the biggest hurdles patients face with the current treatments? And why is this particular area ripe for innovation? Why is it so critically needed?
That's precisely it. CPAP, while it's considered the gold standard medically, comes with that huge compliance challenge. So many patients struggle with the discomfort of the mask every single night, the noise of the machine, maybe even the social stigma for couples sharing a bed.
Right.
Oral appliances don't work for everybody. Surgery is invasive, carries its own risks. So the lack of a simple, widespread, non-device solution means millions of people either go undiagnosed because they don't want the hassle, or they struggle with adhering to the therapies they're prescribed, or they just give up on treatment altogether, which is dangerous.
So the potential for just a convenient once-daily pill,
Yeah.
that would be revolutionary.
Absolutely. It could overcome so many of these barriers for patients. It could vastly improve treatment uptake and long-term outcomes for a condition that really profoundly impacts daily life and long-term health.
Which leads us to the promise of this new oral medication, right, called 8109.
Exactly. Apnimed, it's a biopharmaceutical company. They recently announced truly positive top-line results from Ludero. That's their second phase 3 clinical trial for 8109.
And 8109 is?
It's combination drug, eroxybutynin 2.5 milligram and atomoxetine 75 milligram, specifically designed for adults with obstructive sleep apnea. And this positive news follows earlier positive results from their first phase 3 trial called Cyrenea-RG back in May.
Okay, so 2 successful phase 3 trials now. That's significant.
Very significant. It means we have robust data pointing towards a similar positive outcome.
And what were the key findings from this latest trial in Orero?
The findings are incredibly encouraging, represent a really big step forward. This was a substantial study, 12 months long, involved 660 adult participants across 64 centers in the U.S. Good representation of women, too, 46%.
Okay, and the results?
It demonstrated clinically meaningful and statistically significant reductions in airway obstruction as early as 26 weeks. Participants treated with this once-daily oral pill achieved a mean reduction in their AHI, that's the apnea-hypopnea index. Remember how many times breathing pauses or gets shallow per hour.
Right.
They saw a reduction of 46.8% from their baseline AHI, which is drastically better than the placebo group, who only saw a 6.8% reduction. That's a huge difference in a clinical trial.
Wow, nearly 50% reduction versus less than 7%. That's remarkable.
Truly remarkable. And the good news is that reduction in AHI remains significant even after 51 weeks of treatment, suggests sustained efficacy over a longer period, which is absolutely crucial for a chronic condition like sleep apnea.
And what about, like, actually curing it or controlling it completely?
This is maybe the most exciting part. In about 23% of participants, nearly a quarter treatment with 8109 reduced their AHI to less than 5.
Which means?
Which basically indicates complete disease control. For context, an AHI under 5 is considered within the normal range. So for almost a quarter of the people in the trial, this pill effectively eliminated their clinical sleep apnea.
That is genuinely a game changer.
It really is. The study also found 8109 was associated with significant reductions in hypoxic burden. That's the total amount of time spent with critically low oxygen levels during sleep.
And that's important because?
It's crucial because it's the duration of that oxygen deprivation, not just the number of breathing pauses, that seems to contribute most significantly to the severe long-term health consequences of sleep apnea, the heart disease, stroke risk, etc. Reducing that hypoxic burden is a major win.
So what are the next steps for this drug?
Based on these really robust and consistent results from both phase 3 trials, Apnimed plans to file a new drug application, an NDA, with the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, sometime in early 2026.
So we could be looking at a novel, once-daily pill for sleep apnea, potentially reaching patients. When? Maybe late 2026, 2027.
Potentially, yeah, in the not-too-distant future. And here's where it gets really interesting for millions of people. How could a simple, once-daily oral pill fundamentally change the lives of those suffering from sleep apnea, especially the huge number who struggle with current therapies, like those cumbersome CPAP machines?
What might this mean for the broader landscape of sleep health and just overall well-being? Potentially making effective treatment accessible and far less burdensome for so many people who currently suffer, maybe even suffer in silence because they dread the existing treatments.
It feels like a remarkable step forward in personalized medicine. Could unlock immense improvements in quality of life for so many.
The ripple effects of a breakthrough like this could be absolutely enormous, impacting everything from individual quality of life, daily productivity, mood, and even potentially reducing the massive burden on healthcare systems by mitigating those serious long-term health risks associated with untreated OSA. It's really promising.
So, today we've really covered a lot of ground, taken a deep dive into an incredibly diverse set of global developments. From that complex web of international politics and trade, impacting everything from leadership in Venezuela to luxury car makers in Germany.
Right, to the really intricate dynamics of attention in our digital age, that whole TikTok saga.
Yeah, and finally, this genuinely promising breakthrough in sleep medicine.
And what we've really seen, I think, is how deeply interconnected all these seemingly disparate areas actually are. Political decisions influence economies.
Economic pressures drive corporate strategies, shape supply chains.
And the very way we consume information, the battle for our attention that shapes societal trends, our cognitive abilities, maybe even our physical health through things like sleep. It's this constant feedback loop that affects us all, often in really surprising ways.
Absolutely. Which leads to a final thought. As we navigate this world just awash in content, a world constantly vying for our attention, and as these technological innovations promise new solutions to old problems, what do you think will be the next truly scarce resource?
That's a big question.
And how will we as a society adapt to discover it and maybe inevitably monetize it? Perhaps it's not even a physical resource anymore. Maybe it's something intangible, like genuine human connection. Or maybe even just quiet contemplation, focus. It's a question that goes beyond just economics, right? It delves into our very human nature and what we actually value most.
Or perhaps, maybe, it's the ability to effectively filter out the noise, to discern truth from increasingly sophisticated deception, whether it's from AI or human actors. That ability itself might become the most valuable commodity. Now, that's a deep dive for another time.
Definitely. We encourage you to keep exploring these topics, keep questioning what you see and hear, and continue your own deep dives into the knowledge that matters most to you. Until next time, stay curious.